we can say that we are fighting our own battle on the education front. As I would like to say that I'm very glad to be present here today. Every year I take part in our conference and discover something new for myself. And it's a great opportunity to share your own experiments, to find yourself, to improve your writing and speaking skills. In the end of my presentation, I want to thank our professors for holding conferences at such hard time. We really appreciate it. And I wish good luck, everyone, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Alina. Okay, so at Japanese counterpart.
I am Soko. I'm so glad to be here. And today I am Aina-san and Sora-san will made a presentation about Japanese youth literature. Hope you enjoy it. And I'm a little bit nervous, so now I speak something in this time to feel more relaxed. So, I just attended to a philosophy class. I learned about probability rising. That was a little bit difficult for me. I'm a little bit confused about it. So maybe someone can teach me about it. So that's all. Hope you enjoy our presentation today. And I'm looking forward to your presentations too.
Thank you, Toko. I hope in a difficult situation you will have a holiday, the Saint Nicholas Day or something. Could you talk about the how you will celebrate Saint Nicholas Day this year, full-time students?
Yeah, so may I answer?
Yeah, please, Katya.
Right, so on the 19th of December, we celebrate St. Nicholas Day in Ukraine. It is a very popular holiday, and on this holiday, children usually receive small presents from St. Nicholas. It is very much a family tradition. It is widespread among many families in Ukraine, and I think all of us have very warm feelings and memories associated with this day.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps Japanese students can talk about how we celebrate Christmas. What do we do?
Hi, this is Rika Makue. My major is American Study from Saito University, and my Christmas will be a part-time job. I'm always working, or sometimes every day running around my home to to not to gain my weight. I have to take care about my weight.
Thank you. Thank you, Rita. It seems young Japanese are not so enthusiastic about Christmas as we used to be. Okay, so Ore-san, do you hear me well? Yeah? It's okay. No.
Yes, it's okay. It's okay.
When you have a technical problem, please turn off the video or something.
Today we have no problems. We have no problem. Yes, it's okay. Shall we start?
Yeah. Today, our session will be focused on literature, fairy tales and poetry and literature. As Professor Nikolenko showed last time, literature has a big power to encourage us in hard times. Okay? So we have the four presenters. So maybe Japanese group will start. So I would ask Asumi and Masaki. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It starts. Hello everyone, I am Asumi Takahashi, a sophomore.
And I'm Masaki Mortar Jr., both from Faculty of Liberal Arts, Saitama University, who will be giving a presentation today.
Today, I would like to talk about tanka, a form of poetry unique to Japanese culture, especially modern tanka with the theme of death. Do you know tanka? What image comes to mind when you hear the word tanka? Tanka is a kind of poetry unique to Japan. It is a kind of poem composed with 31 syllables, 5, 7, 5, 7, 7. This form of poetry was called waka before the modern era. However, waka and tanka are two different things. Before the modern era, waka poets used tradition, harmony, and techniques in their poems and sometimes sent them to each other. Therefore, it was unconventional with an emphasis on rules and other rules. In addition, most of the content of waka poems were composed of seasonal scenes and poems about romantic feelings and one's own love situation. On the other hand, such poems written after the modern era are called tanka, which are distinctly different from waka. In tanka poetry, rules, traditions, and techniques that were important in waka poetry are not important. In particular, modern tanka has a high degree of freedom in theme and content. For example, there are tanka that are just short sentences that ignore the reason of 5-7-5-7-7. On the other hand, there are also tanka that are rhythmic and playful. A major characteristic of modern tanka is that there is basically nothing more restrictive than the word count, and it is relatively clear and more approachable than waka, which is also its appeal. Here are some such modern tanka poems. この味がいいねと君が言ったから、7月6日はサラダ記念日。In English, since you said, I like this taste, July 6th is Sarah anniversary. This tanka is a simple tanka. This is a poem about the small things that happen in a casual, everyday life that I made my anniversary. From this poem, we can feel the warmth of daily life. Modern tanka poems that have the freedom and flexibility to express the even trivial things as tanka. だけだもの、あなたには僕だけだもの。だけだもの僕だけけだものだ。In English, only for you, only for me, only for me, only for you. Only for me, only for you. I'm only a beast. This tanka emphasizes rhythms and wordiness rather than content. It is a delightful phrase with its repeated string of letters and their rhythms, like a rapid-fire speech when said aloud. This interesting building play on words is one of the charms of tanka, modern tanka. By the way, have you ever heard of a similar Japanese poem? Haiku is a well-known example of a similar uniquely Japanese poem. Some of you may have heard of haiku. Although haiku and tanka certainly seem similar, they are actually very different. I will now explain the differences between haiku and tanka. First of all, haiku has a total of 70 syllables, 575. This overlaps with tanka in that it has its own rhythm. However, tanka uses more characters, therefore it can express a lot more. Secondly, haiku uses seasonal words or kibo, which are words that have been chosen to represent the season. The basic rule is to incorporate them into the haiku. On the other hand, tanka poems have no rules for what and can express the season in any way they wish. Therefore, tanka has a wider range of themes because it does not require seasonal elements. Both haiku and tanka have a rhythm, but haiku are shorter and more concise and differ from tanka in that the beauty of the season is more apparent. As you can see, both haiku and tanka have their own merits, but there is a big difference between the two. In addition, modern tanka can be categorized based on its freedom. Tatsuya Kinoshita, the most famous contemporary tanka poet, classifies the tanka into 3 types according to the impression the reader receives from the tanka itself. The 3 types of tanka are sympathy, understanding, and mothers. First, sympathy tanka refers to tanka in which the reader can sympathize with the emotions and circumstances read in the tanka, saying, yes, yes, that's right. Next, a tanka poem of I understand expresses something that the reader had not noticed before, such as indeed, it may be so if you say so. It is a tanka with a fresh and innovative point of view that, when thought about again, makes you nod your head in agreement with what the tanka is saying, but it's also persuasive enough for everyone to understand. On the other hand, marvelous tanka refers to tanka with originality that confuses that mind and is difficult for all of us to fully understand, even if we read it many times. Thus, although there are imperial differences in the way tanka is held, each falls into one of the three categorized mentioned above. As I have just explained, poet perceives the world with a broader perspective than ordinary people, even if it is a small event as interaction or feeling. They perceive them from a perspective that we do not easily come up with. The reader receives various impressions from the tanka poems. The variety of viewpoints can also be seen in multiple tanka poems on the same theme. This is one of the most important characteristics and charms of tanka poetry.
To illustrate this point, I'd like to focus on tanka poems that deal with theme of death as an example. What do you all think about this? What do you think death is like? Is it sad? Is it something that will come someday? Is it going to another world? Here are some tanka poems about this written by various poets. First, I would like to introduce a tanka poems titled 死は急に来るかゆっくり来るものか心ワクワクするにあらねど In English, death comes suddenly or slowly, but it's not exciting. In this tanka, death does not exist at the goal of human life, but it is something that approaches us on the way of life. The poet uses speed to express the fact that we don't know when death will come. The poet does not look forward to the death, but he seems to be relatively unafraid of its arrival and awaits his fate. Death is generally sort of something that is always far away. However, in this poem, there is a sense of caution that death may come soon, and it can be classified as convincing tanka. Next is the tanka poem, もう二度と死ななくてよい安らぎに見つめていたり祖母の寝顔. In English, I gaze at my grandmother's sleeping face in peace, that she will never have to die again. I gaze at, in this tanka, the poet likes a sleeping face of his grandmother passed away, and confirms that she has already died. It means he interprets this meaning that his grandmother will never have to die again, and he's relieved by this fact. In this tanka, death may be seen as something terrible, and we can also see the idea of limited nature of death. So to speak, the death comes only once per human being, no matter how many other people have died. This is also an interesting point of view. It emphasizes that no matter how many times people around us die, we all die only once. What about the tanka poem, 死後を知り、叫んともがき結局は死んでしまった男の話. In English, the story of a man who knew his time of death and wanted to avoid it, but in the end he died. As in the drama, it is common seen that person knows his or her deathbed and understands that there is nothing he or she can do, but still wishes not to die. In this tanka, death is represented as something that people wanted to avoid. This may be strongly covered as a tanka of sympathy, or perhaps the poet looked at such a man objectively and thought it was comical that human beings would try to resist death. Either way, the poem also focuses on the finality and the cruelty of death, which is ultimately unavoidable and deadly. Next, we'll also consider the tanka poem. 会った人が死んでしまうということをなんか思ったコンビニのレジ. In English, the staff at the cash register of a convenience store realize that everyone that may would surely die someday. This tanka poem describes the unconscious realization that all the strangers who come to the cash register convenience stores where he works will one day follow the same path of death. What is depicted here is the equality of death for human beings. Also, I've seen the face of each person with actual concreteness makes us feel closer to the death of others, that someone is dying. Lastly, I mentioned a tanka poem, 虹、塗装された金魚を見ているか、地中に埋まる猛瀚林を。In English, rainbow. Hey, the goldfish buried in the ground. Do you see the other half of the circle buried in the ground? This is a tanka poem that reminds us that the rainbow is really in the shape of the circle, and that the other half green, which has no appeared above ground, may be seen by the dead through light in the earth. It is often said that people become stars or go to the sky when they die. From this tanka, I feel the message that the poets that have been sleeping in the ground for a long time, and that they are not going to the other world, another world, or some faraway place. It reflects the idea of death that we will always be in the world where we can see the same rainbow. This may be similar to tanka poem of conviction. Today, we have featured five tanka poems dealing with death. Even though they will all deal with the same theme of death, each tanka poet has his or her own viewpoint, style, and way of proceeding death, and we can even see the poem's view of life and death, and his or her way life in the very few only 31 syllables in Japanese. This is born from the fact that each poet has a different sense and viewpoint. Thus, a major characteristic of tanka is that it often focuses on the expresses one aspect out of many aspects of things. It is one of the major characteristics of tanka poetry that we can obtain multi-faced perspectives on the theme from tanka poems and their tanka poems. Today, we discuss the present characteristics of tanka poetry by comparing it with haiku and the waka poetry, including its classification. I also laid out several tanka poems related to death and touch upon the multi-faced nature of a single theme and the wide range of viewpoint of tanka poets. I believe that the tanka poem is introduced that will help us explore various ways of dealing with various things. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Masaki and Asumi. Maybe you have some question. Any questions? Any questions? Please ask your questions, especially Ukrainian students, please. Yeah, you don't have to raise your hand. Please just talk.
I would like to ask a question for the students. I really enjoyed your presentation. It was very insightful. But could you please tell which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the structure of the tanka or the traditional haiku?
I will say I also like traditional one, but tanka is kind of trend, so We also will see new tanka on the Twitter, so we can enjoy tanka these days.
Okay. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Adriana, please go ahead.
Thank you guys for this really nice information and presentation. It's really something new I found out about literature. And I would like to ask you whether you tried your hand in writing those haiku or tanka.
We never tried in writing a tanka, but we can see on the TV often because a lot of people are interested in the traditional culture, like in the haiku. So basically, when we are junior high school students, we try to write down that kind of haiku and tanka when we take a Japanese class. So we never use traditional paper like these pictures, but we tried and we thought how to write haiku, but it's seldom, but we tried before.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your presentation. And my question is, whose tanka poetry do you like the most and why? Thank you.
Sorry, could you say that again, please?
Sonia, repeat, please.
Whose tanka poetry do you like the most and why?
You mean what is the best of tanka?
I mean author.
Author? Okay. Traditional one, Masaoka Shiki is very famous person for this kind of haiku, but
tanka I like. I introduced the last tanka, 虹塗装された金魚は見ているか。12월모 할리오 last tanka. So this tanka I like the most. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I see you have several questions more, but we don't have enough time. So please ask your questions if we have rest of time, okay? So maybe we should go to the second presenters from Poltava, yeah? Okay.
Yes, thank you. And I would like to say many thanks to Japanese presenters. Thank you so much for your interesting report and very deep report about traditional Japanese poetry. You highlighted some aspects of Japanese culture, and I did not know about many information, and it is very interesting for me. Thank you for Japanese students. And now I would like to introduce the master students from PNPU, Olena Mucha, Inna Krechko, Vlad Hanushenko, and Alexei Mishutочкин. They prepared a report about the Ukrainian fairy tales. Please.
Yeah, Thank you. Thank you, Olha Mykolaievna, for our presentation introduction. Yes, my best greetings to all of the participants here today. Together with my colleagues, we will present you the reflection of Ukrainian morals and beliefs in fairy tales, in traditional fairy tales. So just please give us a second to share the PowerPoint. Please. Yes, but before we start sharing the screen, I would like to mention that actually Ukrainian fairy tales, they reflect the long history of Ukrainians, which comprises a lot of facts, starting from the democracy, hard work, and of course our fight for our free and happy life. So basically over the centuries, those fairy tales, they were collecting the ideas and beliefs about ideals of Ukrainians, how we imagine the perfect person, the perfect Ukrainian, the relationships within the family, within the community, and everything like that. So
1 second, please. I have some technical problems.
Shall I try the
memory stick? Memory stick. Can I just, okay, we can try memory stick. I beg your pardon.
Yeah, we beg your pardon for the inconveniences. And actually, so we hope that will work now. And I would like to thank you, our previous speakers, for presenting us the topic of tanka poetry. That was interesting that you mentioned that, because I believe this represents the true value of our seminars in our university. We studied haiku quite diligently. And we even tried writing some of them in the lessons. That was very interesting experience for us, thanks to Olha Mykolaievna. And yeah, so good luck to everyone. I hope nobody else will have the issues like we experience now.
Maybe you will try. So sorry. Excuse me, can we give a floor to another group, because we need some time to solve the problem? Excuse me.
Yes, I want to give the floor to the another group, and Anastasia Clement and Alexei Bredon prepared a presentation about modern writer Richard Bach and his philosophical work, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Please, Nastya and Alexei.
Hello, can you see the presentation, everyone?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, so good morning and good afternoon, dear students, dear colleagues, and our dear professors. We would like to thank you for the opportunity to participate in the Ukrainian-Japanese conference. My name is Nastya. Well, let's start today's topic of our presentation is the problem of otherness in the work of Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Today, you and I will have a meeting with a special book, the work of the modern American writer, Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. But first, I want to show you one picture. We think you understood this picture correctly. It demonstrates the phraseology white crow. Who is called a white crow? A white crow is a person who differs from other people in his or her appearance, behavior, views, or interests. That is, he or she is a person not like others. This is not accidental because white crows are surprisingly rare in the nature. They must be black or dark or gray, otherwise they simply cannot survive. By the way, the expression white crow was first used in ancient Rome by the poet Juvenal. And since that time, this expression has been used to denote any otherness, unusualness, uniqueness, or sometimes even eccentricity of a person. We still say not from this world or ugly duckling about such people. We all remember Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, The Ugly Duckling, how the hero of that tale was pecked at and insulted by other birds because he was not at all like them. Have you ever felt like a white crow or a black sheep? It is easy to be a white crow or a black sheep in a team. Have you ever met such people? Are such people helpful to society? Maybe they should be re-educated or even kicked out until they become like everyone else. Please write in the chat what you think about these questions or if you have experienced something similar. The work we talk about today is exactly about that, about a white crow or a black sheep. True, the main character is not a crow or a sheep, but a seagull. A seagull named Jonathan Livingston. Here is an image of this hero created by the Ukrainian artist Vladislav Yerko. So the work of the American writer Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, is exactly what we started to conversation with. About otherness and uniqueness of each person and about his or her own life path. Many other issues are raised here. The most important are: who am I? What am I? Why me? Where am I aiming? Will I find my way? How can I live in a world where people like me do not exist? Otherness is not a bad thing. It turns out that this is a sign of democracy. You and I are all different. We may not be the same as someone and around us, but we recognize and respect the others' right to exist and to have their own opinion. Democracy is the right to be different. This is respect for otherness, and this is recognition for otherness. The antonym of the word otherness is sameness. And should the members of the collective of any community be the same, think alike, act the same? If otherness is forbidden, denied, prohibited, persecuted, or punished, do you think it is a democracy? Probably not. This is no longer a democracy. Today, right before our eyes, we see the clash of otherness and sameness, democracy and violence. You and I are aware of all things are fighting for our uniqueness and identity as Ukrainians, for the opportunity to be free people in a free state. We will fly high in our Ukrainian sky like Jonathan Livingston Seagull and enjoy our freedom. We will open new ways and spaces for the development of Ukraine and each of us, because the entire history of mankind convinces us that light defeats darkness. So be it. Richard Bach's story, The Seagull, Jonathan Livingston, is really about otherness, about the uniqueness of each individual, about inspiration and enthusiasm on the way to a goal that seems impossible. But the main thing is not to stop moving, keep moving. Yes, as Richard Bach himself believed, he was incredibly in love with the sky. Richard Bach was born in 1936 in Oak Park, Illinois, and lives in the United States of America. He writes about what he knows and loves the most, about flying because he was once a pilot. He was also a journalist, an editor of the aviation publication Flying. In 2012, his plane crashed, and Richard Bach was seriously injured. However, the sky forever remained his greatest love. Richard Bach is now 85 years old. He hardly gives interviews. We don't know much about him. His book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, published in 1970, moved, inspired, and made more than one generation wink. Why is this book special? Because the plot events in this book are absolutely not important. This is just an excuse to talk about others, essential questions that concern every person when he is looking for himself and trying to make sense of his accidents in the world. Such works where something second completely different, something very deeply philosophical is hidden behind one, are called works parables. Where have you heard the word parable? In the Bible, Jesus Christ speaks in parables. There are also parables in fiction. You and I have already read a parable, A.D. Saint-Exupéry, fairy tale, The Little Prince. Parables are such instructive stories. There is always a deep philosophical meaning or symbols behind which something is hidden. Such works are also called parable works because they seem to have two plans, one concrete plan and the second plan is hidden philosophical. So today we will look for the essence in the work of Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Honestly, I don't know if we will find that other hidden meaning of Jonathan Livingston Seagull's story, because everyone understands the story in their own way. Why is the seagull called Jonathan Livingston? The thing is that in the 1920s and 1930s, there was such a real outstanding pilot, Jonathan Livingston. Jonathan Livingston won a large number of prizes in such competitions. He was considered the best of the pilots of that time.
Thank you, Nastya. My name is Alexei, and I will continue speaking about our presentation. So let's try to start our movement, our flight, following this unusual seagull. It was morning, and the golden rays of the sun beat on the light waves of the calm sea. A fishing boat cast a net about a mile from the shore, and word of it instantly reached the flock, which was waiting for breakfast. Another moment, and thousands of seagulls flew to the boat to get some food for themselves. And far from everyone, far from the fishing boat, and far from the shore, a lonely bird, Seagull Jonathan Livingston, was practicing his flight. Here is such a strange seagull that flew but wanted to fly better. So are people. Someone is busy only with sustenance, food, and material things, and someone has a high dream for which he moves all of his life. Most seagulls don't bother to learn anything about flight, except for the bare essentials. How to get from shore to food and back. For most seagulls, the main thing is food, not flight. But Jonathan Livingston loved flying more than anything. Seagull Jonathan Livingston does not seek animal pleasure from food, but much more, a high goal and free flight. Is it difficult to find your spiritual path? Yes, it is difficult. Failing and disappointment await on this difficult path. Have you experienced conditions like Jonathan the Seagull? Have you experienced defeat and despair? Most likely you have. In the work of Richard Bach, it is said that many trials, disappointments, and even painful moments will await us on the way to the goal. And who said that achieving a goal is easy? No, it is in daily work, daily effort, daily movement. But in such daily efforts, we become stronger, and also we become ourselves. Seagull Jonathan Livingston did not give up, did not stop, and did not become like everyone else. he continued his training and finally achieved the desired result. He learned the dead loop, the slow barrel, the double flip over the wing, the inverted corkscrew, the turn. And he tried so hard. He realized that he had made a breakthrough in flying, and he wanted to give his discoveries to other seagulls to ease their fate. But then everything did not go as he had imagined. The pack did not understand him. Moreover, they condemned him. Jonathan Livingston, said the elder, stand before the eyes of your comrades in the circle of shame for his incomparable frivolity, for the fact that he insulted the dignity and customs of the people of the Seagulls. The day will come, Jonathan Livingston, and you will realize that your frivolity has overtaken you. Life is an incomprehensible mystery, and it is enough for us to know one thing. We are thrown into this world to eat and stay alive while we can. Here's another philosophical conclusion that we can draw from Richard Bach's story. Jonathan Livingston, geniuses, thinkers, and just people with unique ideas are not always accepted by the collective. The laws of the pack are often very cruel, but can the pack and its cruelty stop the thought, the dream, the way to the goal? No, it cannot. And Seagull Jonathan will not stop flying, even alone, even expelled from the flock. This is exactly how the first part of this story ends. The writer did not end the entire work on this. Of course not. There must be something else. The meaning of our life is not in loneliness. Once Jonathan saw two shining seagulls, and they invited him to Haven to continue his studies. And in there, he meets more seagulls, like him, who live only for the sake of the flight. And the leader among them becomes his teacher and mentor. With the help of the leader, Jonathan Livingstone realized that any being is free. It turns out that inside each of us lives unlimited freedom. You just have to feel it and be able to use it. We are free. We have inner freedom, and we are limitless because we have many opportunities for internal and spiritual improvement. This is another very important part of Richard Bach's story. It is necessary to constantly learn and at the same time pass on your knowledge to others. This is how the development of humanity, the development of culture, and the development of civilization continues. In the second and third parts of Richard Bach's story, another seagull appears, Fletcher. He too, like Jonathan, became an exile. Jonathan helps him realize that he should not hate others. It is important to find a way not only to your goal, but also a way to love and help others. I don't understand how you can love a flock of angry birds that almost killed you, said Fletch. Oh, Fletch, you don't have to like it, said Jonathan. Of course, one should not love the hatred and evil. You just have to see each seagull as he really is. See the good in everyone and help them so that they themselves can see their true essence. That is what I call love. In this story, we can find Christian ideas of love, forgiveness, and self-sacrifice for the sake of others. However, at the same time, some ideas of Eastern religions and philosophical teachings of Buddhism appear in this work. This is the story parable about the seagull by the name of Jonathan. It can be read from many different ways, from different sides of the globe, and from different points of view. We thank you for listening to us. Please, what do you think? Should everyone stay the same? What was your opinion about the idea of otherness and not being as everyone else? And how do you see it? How do you see it being unique?
Thank you so much to undergraduate students Anastasia and Alexei for interesting presentation. And now Japanese and Ukrainian students have the opportunity to discuss philosophical problems which are depicted in the work by Richard Bach. Please, who has question or comments?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for such a great presentation. I would like to ask Alexei and Anastasia. Anastasia, you have already mentioned parables by Jesus Christ. I would like to ask, what do you think about Jonathan being compared to Jesus Christ?
Thank you for your question, Maria. It is an interesting take. As we did our research, we have seen the comparisons in the Bible and to the way that Jonathan is described as being the one that breaks away and brings light to the people. There are similarities in that. However, I believe they also have some of their differences. As I have mentioned previously, there are also ways and teachings of Buddhism that differ a bit from the way that Jesus is described in the Bible. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
I also want to add good morning or good evening, and thank you guys for your informative and full of moral presentation. It was really interesting to contemplate about this moral topic about individuality and personal features. And my question is, what personal lesson did you learn from this book?
Thank you for your question, Julia. The personal things that I myself have gotten from this story was that in our world, and especially in our century, that it is incredibly important to see people as individuals, that each one of us is their own special world, their own special mind that they operate with. And it is important for each of us to treat everyone with respect and treat everyone like you want to be treated. That's the main thing that I have learned after doing all of the research about this topic. Thank you for your question.
Toko-san, please.
Thank you for your presentation. This is my first time to hear about story about Jonathan Seagull. So I feel I'm encouraged from the story, and his thoughts or his behavior can encourage us, give us much power. So I'm ready for next presentation. Thank you.
Of course, I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you liked it, Toko-san.
Thank you.
Maybe Urata-san, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely presentation. This is really amazing, and I want all Japanese people listen to this presentation, because like in Japan, it is really normal to be like a white crow when we're doing something different to others. Because like when I do something different things, or like raising a hand in the classes, we can be like a white crow in an easy way. So my question is, what is a normal reaction when you see the white crow? I mean, like a Ukrainian find a white crow, what will you do?
Usually, thank you for your question, by the way, Oraka. Usually whenever in our society there's someone that beats away from the norm, naturally there will be people that are against it. that there will be people that think, oh, what is this person doing? Who are they? Why are they like this? However, I have also found out that there's quite a big amount of such people that if you break away from the norm, if you go out and like do something that you don't care what others will think of you, at least here I have witnessed that there will be people that will support you, that there will be people that think similarly and will support you in what you're doing. And me myself, I would think about what that white crow is doing, and will consider what I want to do myself and make a decision about that. Because sometimes breaking away from the norm is a good thing. It can lead to development and growth. However, for me myself, I also have to think, okay, will this person affect me negatively? You have to think about such things. Like, yes, breaking away from the norm can be a good thing, and refreshing. But sometimes people think a bit too radically, and you have to make a judgment call. But usually, again, here in our culture, there will be people think differently a lot here, and there are groups of people that work together that will find the ideas that they're thinking. Thank you for your question. Hopefully I answered it fully.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because like sometimes they reacted as like a positively or negatively, but we have to be like a welcoming to others, like if something different way. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And we have maybe last question, Sumika-san, please.
Thank you for the great presentation. Can you hear me? Thank you for the great presentation. I'm glad to know the story of Jonathan living for civil. And this is just my comment and not a question. But by listening the David talk, I remember the story named Sweeney. Sweeney is a blackfish in a redfish community. He was isolated and felt useless. But when the big fish came and attacked the fish community, Sweeney came up with an idea that anyone gathered and almost like a bigger fish. And Sweeney took a part of Black Eye. So without Sweeney, the blackfish, they could not survive. So this story also tells us being unique is a great thing. And I think this is true. Yeah, thank you again for your presentation.
You're welcome, and thank you for that great story.
Okay, so thank you, Alexi and Anastasia. That's actually a wonderful presentation. Okay, so we shall go to the third presenter, again from Saitama University. So Toko and Sora and Aina. Start.
Wait a minute, I'll share my screen. Oh, sorry. That's right. Yeah. Okay. So can you see this slide? And can you hear me? Today I'm so happy here, and so feel free to ask anything after our presentation. So before the presentation, let us introduce a little bit about ourselves. I'm Toko, and come here.
Hi, I'm Sora Takeda.
And today we are going to talk about Japanese youth literature. I feel a little bit surprised because there are kind of similarity with your presentation. We also want to tell the story about a girl in the youth literature in Japanese in Japan, and especially we're gonna talk about The Lonely Castle in the Mirror, written by Mizuki Tsushimura. So this book has been read by many young people in Japan. And through this presentation, we are going to make it clear why this book is so popular in Japan. And I want to tell the message we learned from this book. So this presentation can be divided into 4 parts. In first part, we're going to show the purpose of this presentation. In second part, we'll show a brief outline of this book. In third part, we'll give our discussion. We will focus on 2 points. One point is the factors make this book complex. And second point is the terms which attract young people in this book. And in last part, we want to tell the message from this book. So let's move into first part. The purpose of this presentation feels so simple. I want to share why this book is famous and it's popular with young people in Japan. And I want to tell the message, as I said. So the messages are, there are a place where you are, and there is someone around you. The reason I quote these words will be clear after this presentation. Let's move into brief outline. Takeda-san, please.
Hi, I'm Sora, and let me explain about the outline of this story. So, the story begins with several students gathered at the castle in the mirror. So it's super simple. So one day, each child ends up in a magical castle. So this picture, like this, to the mirror, and they are given a task to find a key hidden somewhere in the castle. Then the story follows one of the children, Kokoro, who is in her first year of middle school. And this storyline looks very simple, but some factors make the storyline quite complicated. At first, all of the 7 children are middle school students who refuse to go to school because they have problems in the school, such as bullying. And second, the castle will be closed in a year. So whether they could find the key or not, the castle will be closed, so the children have limited time. And third, the key is an important factor. This key has magical power to make wishes come true. However, only one person could find the key and use it for making wish come true. Therefore, even though they have chances to make friends each other, they are also rivals at the same time. Also, if we make a wish, the castle will disappear, and they will forget everything about the castle. So therefore, they face a conflict between fantasy and the desire to make wish come true. As I said, these factors make the story more complicated, but also attractive. So please explain more, I know.
I'd like to talk about the points why this book attracts young people. First, the aim of the character seems so fancy. As well explained, character's aim is to find the key. It has a power of making a wish come true. The castle in this story is a kind of shelter for students. They can avoid from going to school or staying at home by being at the castle. But the limit and the result make them struggling. Students can't gather forever at the castle if they have a good relationship. It is limited only a year. They have to face their school or family programs in the real after the castle closed. If somebody finds the key, students must forget everything about the castle and the relationship will disappear. Through the communication in the castle, students understand each other. For example, one is good at playing piano, one loves all girls in order. Gradually, they find there are people who support them. Kokoro realizes her mother is always worried about Kokoro, and the friend lives near Kokoro is sharing same feeling with Kokoro. They have to face their program because their programs are solved by the magic of the castle in this story. The only thing that supports the characters who live in the world after the castle closes is the hope gained from the communication in the castle. The struggles in the story depict the movement of emotions. So this book has a reality despite the book uses fantastical situations. This is the reason why the book gains sympathy from young people who may have school programs in Japan. Please continue.
So to this part, we explained the book about the book, which seems like a fairy tale because there are a castle and there is a key and they could make their wish come true, but the suspension, like struggling or their conflicts in relationship, make this story kind of yeah. Sorry, I forgot the word about. But there's a tension in this story. So I want to refer most impressive part we felt from this story, and I translated from Japanese into English. When Kokoro goes to school on time, Mom asks her, "Are you fine? Do you need me to go to school with you?" Because Kokoro refused to go to school before she goes to the castle and stops her. Kokoro replies, "I'm all right." Although they talked several times about this topic, whether to go to school or not, last night, mother still worries about her. Kokoro also thinks it's natural for her mother to say like that, but she decided in her mind to go to school. Because now Kokoro understands school is not only place for her to be, and she thinks there are other places to accept her. And if she found or faced any problems there, she could change the place. Wherever she goes, there will be someone who can get along with her. But now she doesn't need to fight for it because there are also others who will support her. So she decided to come back to school. these scenes tell us through the experience in the castle, Kokoro changed her mind, and her decision may encourage us to deal with our problems. So the message we got from this book, as I say, you are a place where you are. It means we can go anywhere, just recognize the place we belong to. Sometimes we face some bad things. We often focus on it. Our minds often fill with the fear, worries, or something. But we can think that there is our place, so we don't have to be afraid of it. And there is someone around you, and we will find, like our families, our friends. There's sometimes a person who bully you. We feel kind of sad, but that's not all thing. That's all that we have. We have the person who supports us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Toko, Sora, and Aina. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate and speak up, please.
Okay, guys, thanks for your presentation. It was really interesting, and I'm sure that this is the story that can support lots of young people. And you have mentioned some points why this work is maybe attractive to young Japanese people, but I would like to ask you, why did you choose particularly this story to represent the whole modern Japanese literature for youth?
Thank you for your question. Yes, that's great point. So I didn't mention this book has sold 100 million copies, over 100 million copies in these years. So, and this book also being a movie. So we can say now this book is so popular, but maybe it's not this book not represent whole Japanese youth literature, but we can say it's a good example to catch youth Japanese young people's heart. Thank you.
Thank you guys for this impressive presentation, and I found a book which I will read definitely. And my question is, why do you think some stories about challenges, about winner, about goal, how to overcome some problems are very interesting to read? Because I've noticed that point that stories about like how to achieve a goal, how to overcome problems are so popular.
Yes, yeah, that's a good question too. So, how do you think, Takeda-san?
So, can you hear me? So, sorry, I want to know what you mean to this question. So, can you say it again?
Yes, I want to repeat. I will repeat that why do you think stories about challenges, about winner, how to achieve a goal, because we know that main character is like want to make a wish his come true, why these stories are so interesting to read, why they are so popular among youth?
Okay, thank you. One of the reasons is that
thank you, Takeda-san. Maybe she has a little bit confused. But in my opinion, because these stories give us kind of encouragement, because they face challenges. The challenges is not existed only on the storylines. They always facing us in our real world. So leading such story to overcome some fear or overcome some worries make us more powerful, I think. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe you have more questions, but we are running out of time, so I think we should go to the last presenter. Inna-san, are you ready?
Yep, we are ready.
Yes. First of all, many thanks for your understanding of our situations. Thanks for giving us time. And now, again, we're trying to present our group project about the reflection of Ukrainian beliefs and morals in fairy tales. And together with Inna Krechko, Vladislav Hanushenko, and Alexei Mishutechkin, we will take you to this world of fairy tales. Can you see my slides now? Is it full screen? Okay, thank you. And first of all, I'd like to mention that Ukrainian fairy tales, they are basically reflection of our modern current mentality and our past history. So they combine the beliefs in hospitality, as Kyiv used to be the main train center in the Middle Ages. They combine the democracy and equality, how to treat people in the society as it was in the stories and just the relationship between Cossacks in Zaporizhzhia Sich. And those were the stories about Ukrainian identity and how to protect it in any possible situation. As now Ukrainian fight and struggle for freedom and peace continues after the aggression of the Russian Federation, those fairy tales, they double support our modern beliefs and values. And since Ukrainians are generally very peace-loving and hardworking people whose perfect personality and perfect picture of the world is just hardworking people in the field or in the city, providing the crafts and agriculture that were popular in Ukraine over the past centuries, we still are ready to face the difficulties and not to give up in the face of hardships when we have them. And this is what in details my colleagues will give you information about. So Inna Krechko will tell about the legend of Mikita Kozhumyaka, and after her, Vladislav Hanushenko will present the legend of Kotygoroshko. Alexei Mishutechkin afterwards will tell the fairy tale how Olenka became hardworking, and I will wrap it up with the forest song, a legend about Ukrainian nature. So Inna, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for your patience. Ukrainian folk fairy tales are full of wisdom and vivid samples of human bravery and altruism. The story about Mikita Kozhumyaka is one of many Ukrainian folklore examples that represent the strong attitude and cold mind of the true warrior, who defends his land and people, not because of someone's ambitions, or financial profit, but for freedom and peace. The next slide. This Eastern Slavic hero, also called Bohatyr, is a character from a legend whose oldest prototype can be found in Laurentian Chronicle. A bogatyr is a stock character in medieval East Slavic legends akin to Western European knight-errant. The fairy tale of Makita Kožumiaka tells that a dragon Smigorinich used to attack the lands of Rus and take beautiful girls as prisoners. Once he even kidnaps the daughter of a Kievan prince. The next slide. To find out the dragon's weakness, the girl pretends to fall in love with him. Gorinich reveals to her that there was only one person that could defeat him, a tanner from Kiev named Makita. The princess sends a letter by pigeon to her father, to the prince. Afterward, the prince goes to the tanner's house to ask for help. Next slide. It takes a while for him to persuade the Bohatyr into fighting, and even though Makita refuses the wealth and power offered by Prince. That's why the prince decides to gather hundreds of orphans who lost their families because of the dragon's terror in front of Makita's house, and they beg the Bogatyr to save them from Horinich's attacks. It touches the Bogatyr's heart so deeply that he agrees to fight. Next slide. Then Makita goes to Gorinich's lair, and after a long fight, the frightened dragon offers Makita to become allies and rule the world together. Makita demands that they plow the border of their halves of the world. For this purpose, he uses the dragon instead of plowing horse. After they plow the furrow across the whole world, Makita demands that they plow further to divide the sea as well. The foolish Gorinich obeys Bogatyr and drowns in the sea. Next slide. The idea of fairy tale is to show that fame and respect follow only the ones who show their strengths and wisdom while accomplishing their mission. Nowadays, the actual meaning is not lost. Likewise, this teaches how important to follow the right purpose for the sake of life and prosperity. Evil is needed to be killed. Here you can see the animation of the fairy tale or legend. The first one was in 1865, and there is a bit modern one. It was released in 2016. If you want to watch it, you can watch it for free on YouTube. So thank you so much for your attention. I give the floor to another participant.
Thank you, Ina. I'll continue our presentation, and I want to introduce you to another hero of the Ukrainian fairy tale, who for many Ukrainian children is an ideal of behavior and honor. Котигорошко is a fairy tale image of a boy who was extremely clever, strong, and noble. There is a very interesting legend about the story of his birth. The boy was born after a woman washing clothes on the river saw a pea rolling along the path and ate it. Soon she gave birth to a boy who was named Котигорошко. In the Ukrainian tradition, peas are considered a symbol of life-giving force in agricultural societies, yield, fertile, and prosperity. There are several versions of this tale, but in this report, I'll take one of the most common versions. In my opinion, this fairy tale can be divided into 4 parts for a better understanding of the plot and its moral. The first part of the tale tells us about the appearance of Котигорошко and his family living in the village. His family consists of father, mother, 6 sons, and 1 daughter. The name of all the characters remain unknown, except the daughter, whose name was Olenka. This family works in the fields and in this way gets their food and money. By the way, this aspect of the tale presents us ancient Ukrainian customs and traditions because Ukrainians have been working in the fields and tilling the land since ancient times. Undoubtedly, such a tradition developed due to the extremely fertile Ukrainian land and the hard work of the Ukrainians themselves. Before the birth of the Kotehoroshko, an accident happened, and his sister and 6 brothers disappeared, got into the lair of an evil snake while they were working in the field. Please, Olena, can you please turn back a bit into slides to the point where the dragon is? Yeah, thank you. It is interesting that in this tale, as in many other Ukrainian folk tales, the main evil character is a snake, which is a giant creature with 3 heads. He looks a lot like dragon. When Kotehoroshko grew up, he decided to go and free his brothers and sisters from the lair of an evil snake. He asked a local blacksmith to forge him a huge mace. He also asked his mother to bake him bread for the journey. Next slide, please. This aspect of the tale also represents Ukrainian strength, dignity, and determination in the fight for family, will, and land. After all, even realizing that the snake is a terrible and gigantic creature that can be much stronger than him, Kotehoroshko goes to free his brothers and sister. Next slide, please. This fact is clearly confirmed by the events taking place in modern Ukraine. Since the very beginning of the Russia invasion of Ukraine, our people have been desperately fighting the invaders for their freedom and will. On the front and all around the country, Ukrainians are fighting against evil who came to take their land, kill people, and destroy our cities and villages. Another slide, please. Another aspect is bread. Bread is a very important aspect of the Ukrainian culture because traditionally, Ukrainians welcome their guests with bread and salt, which is an ancient Ukrainian custom. For Ukrainians, bread is a symbol of noble intentions and friendship, and therefore hospitality. This symbol combines the basis of life, bread, thanks to which everything is born and lives, and the essence of life, salt, thanks to which everything remains itself. So to meet with bread and salt means to respect a person for what he is and to respect him as he is. But let's get back to the plot. Next slide, please. Kotehoroshko went to the lair of an evil snake, where he successfully defeated it and freed his brothers and sister Olenka from the lair. However, the brothers were intoxicated by the snake's lair, so when they returned home, they did not accept Kotehoroshko into their family. Kotehoroshko is forced to leave his home in search of a better destiny. Next slide, please. The second part of the tale tells us about the acquaintance of the main character with 3 men who also have extraordinary strength. He met Vernehora, who can bend mountains, Vernedub, who can bend stout oaks, and Krutevus, who stops water to cross rivers. With such a team, they went on a journey. Next slide. When it got dark, they found a forest house where they decided to spend the night. In the next few days, 3 of them went hunting and 1 stayed in a hut to cook food. Every time a small but powerful old man came to the hut, demanding to take him over the threshold. Vernehora, Vernedub, and Krutevus treat the old man disrespectfully, and he eats everything cooked and leaves. Next slide, please. The guards do not admit this, telling the others that they fell asleep and did not have time to cook any food. On the 4th day, Kotehoroshko himself stayed in the hut. He took the old man over the threshold, but he tried to hang him on the whistle in the wall. Kotehoroshko was quicker than the old man and pinched his beard in an oak tree. Old man unrooted the oak and ran away. Next slide. At this moment, the hospitality of Ukrainians is represented because unlike other men, Kotehoroshko treated the guests kindly, having no idea about his future intentions to harm the hero. Next slide. In the third part of the tale, Kotehoroshko, together with his new friends, follows the footsteps of that old man, which leads to a pit into underworld, which Vernehora, Vernedub, and Krutevus are afraid to go down. They need ropes to which Kotyhoroshka gets into the underworld. At the bottom, there is a palace and a princess who tries to convince Kotyhoroshka not to fight the old man, but there were no hero who managed to fight him yet. Next slide. Kotyhoroshka fights him, wins the fight, and takes all the treasures with the princess. His friends take 3 bags of treasures and the princess out to the surface of the upper world, and they decide to throw Kotyhoroshka down. Next slide. We see betrayal on the part of his friends in this episode. However, Kotyhoroshka turned out to be smarter than the others. Next slide. He tied a stone instead of himself, and when it was dropped, the hero remained unharmed. Next slide. In the 4th part of the tale, the hero went on a journey through the underworld. Suddenly, the clouds flew, and it started raining. Kotyhoroshka hid under the tree where he saw little birds being flooded by the rain in the tree nest. Kotyhoroshka covered them. Next slide, please. Kotyhoroshka covered them with his shirt and protected them from the rain. Soon the father bird arrived. He thanked the hero for saving the children and offered him help. Next slide. Kotyhoroshka asked the bird to take him to the upper world. Next slide. Because Kotyhoroshka loved his homeland very much and he wanted to return. In flight itself, the bird asked to take 6 pieces of meat and water to feed him. But there is not enough meat, so Kotyhoroshka cut off his calf and gave it to the bird. After understanding that Kotyhoroshka has cut off part of his leg, the bird gave the calf to the hero and brought living water. Sprinkled with living water, the calf grew in place. Next slide, please. This episode reflects the close connection between man and nature, their independence, and the need for their harmony, which is necessary for life. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. In the final part of this tale, after getting out of the underworld, Kotyhoroshka looks for Vernehora, Vernedub, and Krutevus in the place of the father's princess. His friends lied that they have saved the princess from the old and evil man and not the Kotyhoroshka. Kotyhoroshka tells the truth to the father of the princess, and at the very end of the story, he married the princess. Next slide. So, in my opinion, this fairy tale vividly demonstrates the indominant spirit of the Ukrainian people and their sincerity. The main character, even after numerous betrayals and deceptions by other people, remained a kind and compassionate person. He was betrayed by his 6 brothers, and after he saved them from the lair of evil snake, his 3 new acquaintances also betrayed him after he gave them the old man's treasures. And even after that, he helped the little birds and received a sincere thank from the father bird. Next slide, please. This fairy tale teaches to be cautious and very careful with people. It shows that there are not only good people in this world, but at the same time to remain open and compassionate. Kotyhoroshka is a strong and courageous hero, but trusting and kind. Next slide, please. He did not lose his love for others and his humanity despite the bad experience throughout his journey. At the very end of my report, I want to know the similarities of this tale with the Japanese folk tale of Momotaro. Next slide. About the boy who was born from a peach that floated down the river. He was also very strong and brave, and he lived in harmony with nature, knew how to make friends and protect his land from evil monsters. In my opinion, this fairy tale is very similar in its plot to the tale about Kotyhoroshka. The characters themselves are also not very different. I mentioned some of the traditions and customs of the Ukrainian people, which can be noticed in the plot of the tale about Kotyhoroshka. So I suggest that students from Japan join the discussion of this aspect after our presentation. Maybe they will help us to understand the traditions and background of the Japanese folk tales better. Thank you. That was my part.
Thank you, Vlad. And now, dear professors and all participants of the seminar, your attention is invited to a report on the Ukrainian fairy tale, how Olenka became hardworking. Next slide. Ukraine is a country with a strong spirit, unique culture, traditions, and nature. However, this ain't the only fortunes. It's still a country of hardworking people. Taking into account the availability and quantity of fertile land, Ukraine has a long history of being among the leading producers of agriculture products in the world. Therefore, it isn't surprising that in fairy tales much attention is paid to work on the fields. Next slide, please. Today, I would like to draw your attention to the Ukraine folklore tale, how Olenka became hardworking. The plot of the fairy tale is that a girl from a working rural family with many children was very lazy, and this upsets her father. However, there was a young man who wanted to marry Olenka for her personality. The young man believes that she can be caring and diligent. He promises his potential father-in-law that he will make her a working woman. Next slide. According to the Ukrainian tradition, the wife went to live to the husband's house and his whole family. Her father-in-law, who is the head of the family, has a habit of asking each family member before eating what he or she has done during the day. Of course, Olenka never works, so she doesn't get dinner at all on the first day. Next slide. The next morning, she is hungry and thinks that she should do at least something. So she brings a bucket of water. For this, the strict father-in-law orders to give her a mug of water. Next slide. On the third day, Olenka again brings a bucket of water of the house and helps her mother-in-law mix the dish kulesha. Kulesha is a Ukrainian dish made from corn flour. It's especially loved in the mountainous regions of Ukraine, in the Carpathians. Next slide. When Olenka helps to cook kulesha, her father-in-law shares the dish with her. Later, Olenka begins to work on an equal footing with other family members. Next slide. When soon after Olenka's father visits her in her new family, he can't believe how hardworking she is, and is very pleased with it, like Olenka's husband, of course. Next slide. No one appreciates or tolerates lazy people, but as the fairy tales teaches, such people just need to reach the right approach and motivation. This approach to Olena is demonstrated by the father-in-law. The main idea of the fairy tale, in my mind, is that in order to receive any goods, food, clothes, shoes, and other things, one must work. And hard work is the only tool that helps people stay human and reach prosperity. In addition to fairy tales, there are many proverbs about work in Ukraine. For example, the master's work is great. He who gets up early gets things done. Good for the blacksmith who forges with both hands. You can't build a house without an axe. If you want to eat kalachi, don't sit on the stove. Next slide. The real treasure for people is the ability to work, is uprightly rolled. And if one works diligently, the result will not be long in coming, because the sweetest of all fruits is a result of own work. Everything beautiful and most necessary in the world is created by human labor. Work glorifies a person, makes their life better, more interesting, enriches them spiritually. Next slide. In my mind, after Ukraine's victory in the war, a lot of work will need to be done. And Ukrainians understand this and are ready for it. In my opinion, it's hard work that will allow not only to revive that what has been destroyed, but also to achieve a new standard of living characteristic of developed countries. Next slide. Thank you for your attention. And now my colleague Olena will tell you about the famous and interesting fairy tale, The Forest Song.
Yes, thank you, Alexei. Many thanks for your presentation. And we bring our sincere apologies for running over the time. So I think, Nonaka-sensei, we will leave it up to you if I will present the rest of the report. I can make it up in 4 minutes, I guess, if I wrap it up, or we end the presentation here.
It is okay, so go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. So I will now quickly draw your attention to another sort of fairy tale that's very popular in Ukraine, The Forest Song. This is literary fairy tale, so it has an author, and the author herself is very important for Ukrainian literature, Lesia Ukrainka, and one of her most famous poetry, Kontraspem Sparrow, so Without Hope, I Hope, brings a lot of motivation and inspiration to continue fighting and to continue life. It inspires us to find something beautiful in everyday life. Her personality itself is interesting because she was suffering a horrible disease, bone tuberculosis, which means that every movement hurt her. And even though she struggled, she still managed to find happiness. She was very active, prolific author. She was active supporter of Ukrainian theater, and she was very fashionable icon in Ukrainian history, and therefore we respect her a lot. And one of her writings was based on Ukrainian legends and fairy tales, because we believe there are many creatures living outside. So those can be mermaids or rusalki living in the rivers, aridnik, the person who lives in the mountains, or maybe vodyanik, who lives in the lakes and rivers, or lisovik, the elderly gentleman living in the forest. So Mavka itself is another powerful figure of Ukrainian folklore. She is the daughter and the protector of the forest. And this particular fairy tale tells the story of Mavka falling in love with the human being. She is charmed by the magic music that a human being is playing, and therefore she falls in love. But then she faces a challenge. She has to choose either to stay in the forest and to continue carrying on her duty, or to choose her love. And she chooses the second one. She falls in love. She switches her place of living to a human village, and therefore she has to do a lot of human work, which seems a lot unnatural to her, different, illogical, and irrational. And being far away from her forest, from her source of power, she loses the energy, she loses power, and becomes, and she starts fading away, disappearing as the person. She resembles the host, just the ghost, and therefore her lover is betraying her. After such a horrible event, she tries to re-find her power, her energy again, and therefore she chooses to come back to the forest, to her normal life and her duties. And slowly but surely, she gains her personality back. She finds peace and starts being charmed by nature again. And the fairy tale is very special, not because of this rather intriguing plot, but also because lots of descriptions of nature, a lot of rivers, lakes, mountains, and everything is placed in this fairy tale, and as well as in the animation that was released recently. So you might compare the landscapes of real Ukraine, like Dnipro River, the Carpathian Mountains, or Ipatri Mountain, and with the landscape in the animation. So to wrap it up, all these fairy tales, they reflect the beliefs of Ukrainians, our code of honor, our value for labor, and importance of nature. So I hope that was something that you could learn from the presentation. If you have any questions, we would be more than happy to answer. Would be more than happy to receive any comments, and we are very grateful for your attention, and we believe that this conference is a great celebration of Ukrainian and Japanese cooperation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lena, Inna, Vlad, and Alexei. I agree with you. Our Ukrainian fairy tales help us to be strong, brave, and peaceful. Thank you. And who has questions or comments?
Yes, Toko, please.
Thank you for your presentation. It's so interesting to know about Ukrainian fairy tales, and I'm surprised in the similarities and the mind to solve our nature, and as important thing in Japan, we have a place to look nature as God, like some mountain or some rivers or some and so on. So can I ask, in Ukrainian, is there any place like in Japan?
Yes, thank you. This is a very good question. I think in Ukraine, these are the leftovers, so to say, of our pagan history. So beliefs that used to be on the territory of Ukraine before Christianity. And we had a lot of gods, and especially people were standing to explain the nature and all the nature science as some other human or god creatures that were ruling over it. Yeah, thank you for the question. And yeah, maybe I can return it, because in Ukraine, I think all the powers of river, mountains, and everything, they are rather personalized. So we used to imagine them as like having maybe somehow human appearance. Is it typical for Japanese beliefs as well?
Well, like I come up with some creatures like kappa live in the river, or some. So who can help me, Japanese students? I think you mean is like in Ukrainian there's some. Sorry, can you repeat the question again? Maybe I mistook the means.
Yeah, sure. I mean that in Ukraine, we believe that creatures basically look like people. They look like people, so they have basically human features like nose, eyes, hands, and everything, like hair, beard.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, and we have also tons of creatures like Ukrainian creatures. So we also believe, because in Japan, where we call Yorozu no Kami, it means in nature we have tons of
creatures, it's a little bit similar to God. So actually, basically, Japanese, it's rare to have religion, but we believe in terms of over 100 of gods living in nature. So it's a little bit different from creatures, but we believe that kind of gods in nature. Thank you.
Many thanks for your answer, Toko, and many thanks for your answer, Masaki.
Thank you.
I don't necessarily have a question. I just wanted to say thank you for such a great presentation, as I have liked it a lot, especially the part about Código Orozco and the part where Ina was talking about her presentation. Thank you. It was very good.
Thank you for your comment. Many, many thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ukrainian students. I'm sorry, but we shall stop. Yeah, today. I hope,
yes, I'm afraid we have no time.
But I think we have had a good presentation and a good discussion for today. Yeah. Okay, so we will meet again on January 10th in 2023. So this project year is coming to an end, and I wish you all happy New Year. I hope the coming year will be happy and glorious year for Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to say some words and many thanks to Susumu Nonaka-san for organizing this series of seminars, and thank you for Professor Lydia Vasilyevna. She is with us on this seminar, and I would like to thank all participants, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year are coming, and I wish all participants, all professors, peace and love. Be happy.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So Happy New Year. Bye bye.
Yo, bye.
Bye.